Hello, everyone. I am here today with Shane Mack. Shane is the CEO and co-founder of Skedaddle, founder of Ask, board member at K Squared Labs. He was director of product at Surly, and he's the author of the Amazon bestseller Stop with the BS. And he's also one heck of a musician and singer. Thanks for doing this, man.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, bud.
It's crazy because you and I go way back to the early blogging days. It's crazy to see how far you've gone in those years. And I wanted to start with something that I was always pretty impressed by, that you were always able to do, which is you had this capacity to get things done, to go from idea to good enough and out in the world, and an incredible pace. And I wanted to know, you wrote a book. Your book, you wrote it in a train ride, right, from Seattle to San Francisco and back, right? And your book is doing so well and did so well since you launched it. So where does that capacity to execute come from, in your opinion?
I think it's, thanks for thinking that, but I think the truth behind the scenes is that it doesn't happen that fast. It must just look like that on the outside, and it really comes to just being able to finish it. And the truth behind the book is that I've always, since I've been a kid, the only way I can get something done is if I literally do it for like 40 hours straight and I go insane and I have an insanely focused, over obsessive personality, which can also be a terrible thing. I find myself insanely burned out sometimes,
Right.
but it's the only way I ever knew. Like when I wanted to play music, I tried 6 times to learn how to play guitar. And until I actually became a professional musician and started playing a lot of paid shows and playing a lot of bigger shows, literally the only way that happened was I locked myself in a room 10 hours a day during college. I didn't drink, and I learned lyrics to like 1,500 songs and all the chords obsessively with a book of like this big. I printed out tabs in the computer hall, and that's all I did for like 6 months straight. It was insane. And now I still play all those shows, and I can play over like 2,000 songs. And now it's evolved into not just playing cover shows, and I play a original show with a DJ called Wait What. We do a live mashup show all over the country. But the only reason that happens because of like my obsessive personality led me to do that. When you talk about the book, I was like, I'm never going to be able to finish a book. So how the hell will I do this? Well, I'm going to take 5 years of thoughts. I'm going to get on a train from Seattle to San Francisco and back, and I'm going to write the book in one train ride. And also, I thought like at the time, so I was watching Seth Godin, Gary Vee, Jason Fried, all these guys that I'd interviewed and I'd been friends with, and then I read their books and they're good, like, but they're not fucking like they're not like this most amazing advice. Most of it's like articulately saying common sense things that we just need to remember to actually like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense.
Right.
And I was like, how the fuck do they write a bestseller? Like and I was just, whether it was my own ignorance or, overly confident self at that time, I was like, fuck it, I can do that. And so I got on a train and I thought, okay, how do I do it different? So along with getting it done really quickly, I actually think the book sells because of the concept, not the content.
Right.
I don't think it's actually great content. I wouldn't say half the shit in the book that I would like today at all.
Right.
Because it was before I'd ever started a company, before I'd ever raised venture-backed money, before we'd ever sold a company. I was kind of an employee looking up like, fuck this system, this is stupid. And now I'm like, I have employees that I need to take care of and give them health insurance and have a great place to work. And my mindset 7 years later is totally different.
7 years, wow.
But the book,
Yeah.
6 years about. So in 2008, the book idea was like, oh, if I write it on a train, short little blog content is kind of what these books are now, the ones that are selling. And you have to kind of a twist. And so I was like, what if I write it in one day? That's catchy. I wrote a book in a day, 300 pages.
Right.
What if I'm on a train and I take a photo out the window, what song I'm listening to on iTunes, where I'm at on the train ride, and the entire book, when you flip through it, you're literally in italics in the book, I'm writing my thoughts.
Right.
And then every chapter is just me grabbing a chapter like out of this huge Evernote file I had of 5 years of thoughts. And I told this at the beginning of the book. I'm like, the book is done when the train stops back in Seattle. And so that's the concept.
Yeah.
And I think the concept stuck. People are like, shit, he wrote a book in a day. And at minimum, I think what it does is it makes you think, shit, you just got to go fucking do it and stop talking about it.
So let me ask you something.
The truth behind that, it took 4 years. It took 4 years to publish that.
Oh, really?
So I wrote it in 2 days. I hired Mike Rhodes, a designer that did Rework, the New York Times bestseller by Jason Friedman, to do my cover. So I paid a decent amount of money for that. And then I hired 2 years later, I got really self-conscious. I wrote this book right before Gist happened. We raised money, we built a company, we sold it to BlackBerry. In those 2 years of my life, I learned more than the last 24, right?
Right.
And by the time that got done, I hadn't published the book yet. And I was like, fuck, I would never want my investors to read this book because it would look, it wasn't, I still like the book. It's very inspirational. I was very inspired, but I was pretty ignorant when I wrote it. And you're always, the more you learn, the more you realize we don't know anything. But at the time, I was speaking really confidently about things, about management, and you don't need management and styles and all this that I just didn't really know.
Right.
Because I was an employee. And so I look at that and I'm like, 2 years later, I was like, I can't publish this book.
Right.
And I put a blog post out that said how to launch a book 2 years late and suck at it. And I attached a free PDF, which was basically a text file. I never even did the cover. I kind of was totally deflated. And I was like, man, I'm never going to get this book out. And then this girl, literally, I attribute the entire book's success to one person. And her name's Sarah Peck. And this girl named Sarah Peck, she read the book and she emailed me and said, someone needs to publish this because a lot of people need to read it.
Right.
And she's like, and I told her the whole thing in the blog post of how I was like pretty self-conscious and I didn't really want to post it. And it was kind of like self-promoting. And I was kind of like past that. Like when I first got online back in the days with like, we were all like just self-promoting whores. And then like really quickly, I was like, man, I feel so like just intrinsically shallow. And she wrote that and she said, but listen, everyone who gets out of college that was your age at that time, this book has a really inspirational message. Yeah. And she said, I'll design it. I run a Start Publishing as a company. And let's split it 50-50 and we'll publish this. And then I said, she convinced me that let's do it right. Let's design it well. Let's launch it right. I got a lot of horsepower. Then I went and got like, Tony Hsieh wrote the foreword for my book and like a lot of New York Times bestsellers authors to like validate and everything. Cause I'd already built these relationships over the last 7 years or 6 years or whatever. And that's then how it came out and then became a good selling book. That was a long answer, but I would say like, it wasn't fast.
No, actually. Of course. Like, I get it. And but what the part that you touched on that it's really interesting to me is that you were past that message later. And I think, I deleted 95% of my blog posts that I wrote, in the first 3 years of blogging. And I think it's normal to sort of be, too harsh on ourselves and our past selves and say, I would never do that. And I know it's pretty brutal. But at the same time, I think I've also, I don't know if you have this feeling, but I've also came to appreciate that people need different things in different stages, and there's a moment to be inspired. And maybe you're past that moment, you have much more clarity about what you want to do with your life or which direction you want to go. So maybe you're more into, hey, I need to get better now. But back then, that inspiration was very important for you to get started. So maybe spreading that message to other people would can have a big impact. And I think this is what like you said, the Seth Godins and the Gary V's and all that they did for us back then probably was they inspired us, right? And even though that's not maybe what we read now, they play a key role in our beginnings. And there was one thing that you talk about in the book that I wanted to ask you, and I'm sort of paraphrasing your question, which is, why is it that having a carefully crafted resume is the last thing one needs to make shit happen in today's world?
Well, basically, I would say if you send me a resume, I probably won't hire you because you're doing what everyone else is doing.
Right.
And this is mostly in the information kind of thinking economy, which is more of like tech, writing, stuff like that. I think the best people are the people, you already know what they've done. Like, who's done great writing, great work, great marketing, great development based on all the products they've ever built. If they never had a job, they built one themselves, then great. And like, that's kind of what I look to. And then it's just, do they fit into the kind of company and culture you're building? And that you don't see from a resume at all. So you just have to meet them. And, I learned a lot about hiring in my last company because we fucked it up so bad. And having to do a 20-person group layoff in one day is the worst thing you ever do. And you never start a company to do that. And so, I don't know. I definitely at scale, right? I've been a part of an 800-person company, a 12-person startup, a 45 to 50-person startup, and now there's 3 of us again. And at scale, it's different. You need to fill roles really quickly. You need recruiters. Resumes are the easiest way to source. Like, I'm not saying you don't need one, but for high-paying, really early technical jobs, or if you want to get in to help build and start a company and be part of a founding team, like the resume is the least of like your worries, in my opinion.
Right. I think there's the whole system is kind of what I'm seeing is that it's not so much about. I agree with you on scale. Scale is this. It's pretty hard when people talk about degrees don't matter or resumes don't matter. Well, I don't know. Depends on who you're. Depends on the size of the system and the size of the input and the size of information you have to filter. But in reality, I think what you're trying to get at is you have to be more creative and more innovative in how you manage your career in general, not just in terms of your resume, but in every other aspect. I think this is one of the things that I always found interesting about you, that you had all these sort of facets moving forward at the same time. You were a musician and your music career was growing at the same time as your business career was growing. At the same time, your writing was growing. And how did that connect for you? How did all those different areas of life connect for you?
Well, two things. Let's go back to the last thing, which is the resume. I don't think you shouldn't have anything. I think all the things add up to what someone perceives of you, right? Whether that's a resume, whether it's a website, whether that's work, whether that's a meeting. I think there's really strategic and much better ways to have influence over people and make them believe in you as someone they need to hire versus you begging them for a job. And that's always the leverage that you should be looking for in life. And so I have a philosophy called an hour a day, which T.A. McCann kind of gave that to me and said, if you're helpful to someone an hour a day, just an hour a day with whatever skill set you're really good at, the amount of opportunity you'll create for yourself in 3 years and helping 1,500 people will be so freaking exponentially higher than if you are always trying to get someone to do something for you every day. And I've done that for the last 5-6 years. And I'll send product design, I'll redesign an entire product and I'll send it to, some CEO. And the amount of relationships and now I'm on advisor boards of a lot of companies. Those come from just giving feedback and being really helpful. But above and beyond, like the reason I even got to go do a startup with one of my favorite guys in the world, T.A. McCann, who ended up being kind of my MBA and mentor and a CEO that is one of the best CEOs in the industry, is because I looked at his product, which is all public, his first prototypes, his marketing emails I was getting, his entire end-to-end flows, and I'm a product designer. I'm like, well, I don't really like this, and I think it could be much better here, here, here. And I spent an entire month, 1 month, redesigning the entire product, writing every new email, rewriting all the onboarding, every step, what the product did, how the marketing message happened, everything. Redid, like it took me a month. And I sent him a file and an email, which is a zip file that said, maybe this can help. That's all I did. And then he said, well, let's go do a company together. Like, that's how you get jobs.
I think it's interesting because people are so upset. One of the biggest, I think, mindsets we need to break, we need to let go, is this idea that we need to have this sort of working arrangement before I do any work for you, before I show you that I'm valuable. And this mindset of if I work I need to get paid, if I create value I need to get paid, or I need a paycheck. I think that is extremely limiting for career growth in today's world, because what you did, it made people I don't think, just in case, I want to make sure that I point to it. It's really rare to find people that are willing to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna invest in this. I'm gonna try creating this sort of value for this person, and who knows what happens. But I'm gonna do the work first and ask and see what happens later. And if people did that more proactively, I think the way their careers would grow would be very different. But the problem is that everyone expects the other party to give everything on a silver platter. It's like, oh, here's the thing for you. You just need to come in and just get inserted in the system, and everything will work fine, and you get a paycheck, or you get investor money or whatever. And I think it has the system all wrong. Where do you think you got that habit from? The habit of saying, hey, I'm just gonna go create. I'll just do this thing for this person, and we'll see where it goes.
There's two things here, which I don't know if we're getting off track because I didn't answer your other question, but there's two things that I truly believe in life. Yeah. And I don't know how I ever figured them out, or even if it's the right answer. It's that job titles don't ever become a catalyst of careers. People think when you get in college, they say, if life's like this, and you think I'm going to be a director, I want to be a director of X. a VP of Y, whatever it is. That's going to make me go like this. Okay, it may make a little career growth, right?
Right.
The truth about everything I've learned in life is that the only thing that's a catalyst of careers are the people you work for. And so instead of focusing on what your job title you want in life, what I would do and what I've done is made lists of the 5 people that I would want to work for. And those people are the people that like, I want to be a CEO someday. So I want to work for a great CEO. So I made a list of 5. Right. What do they need help with? Well, my skill set is in product design of software. So I'm like, can I use that skill set to be helpful? And the truth about it all is that being helpful every day without expecting to even have a job makes you better at whatever skill set you're trying to be better at. So just by doing it, you're seeing other products, you're getting better at your skill set, you're designing things, you're like practicing. Get a day job, do something else, and come home every night and design shit or build shit or whatever, right? And then write for someone. But do that, like that discipline and rhythm and doing it will just change like your trajectory of what your career path is. If you find people that are like, holy shit, I came in as an employee, I met TA taught me how to raise money, start a company, hire people, do a C Corp, raise money again. We sold a company to BlackBerry. How does that pay out? How do equity get structured? How do you file 83Bs with the government and taxes? Like, fuck, I didn't know any of that. Like, that's like the best MBA you can ever have. And I made money. It was like, because of someone, right? And so I think the thing in my life that I think about is who would I like to work for because I think I could learn from or work with. I mean, then the next company I did, I just started it because I wanted to work with the people that were starting it. And I was like, on a list of people I do companies with, and timing works out, so let's go do it. People are the only people that make decisions. If I get cut from baseball my senior year of high school like I did, it's not because of my fucking stats. I had the best batting average on the team. It's because the coach didn't like me.
Right.
People make decisions. Everything. Like nothing in life is just people making decisions. Like that's it.
Yeah. Everything that you want, either a job, money, a relationship, friendships, whatever, it's behind a person. So understanding how people think, understanding how you can help them is huge. But let me actually touch on something that I think maybe sort of not obvious. I think you actually, it's definitely not obvious to you, but you appreciate it a lot, and I appreciate it a lot too because it's most of what I do, which is asking the right questions. You talk a lot about, the way you go about this problem is, well, how can I help them? And then I assuming that as you go through creating that value for them, you're asking yourself questions. Okay, how can I help? How can I change this for them? How can I make this better? Whatever. And I think, I heard a mentor tell me once that whatever is obvious to you, it's that it can be very valuable for others, right? And you, because I want to get into your company Ask, and the mission, I'm reading it. Our mission is to create products and experiences that help people learn by asking the right questions. So you clearly have a passion for helping people ask the right questions. And so what did you create this company, and what are the right questions? I guess that's another. How do you start? How do you know where to start asking?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in there. By the way.
I know, yeah.
So I'll go back to how Ask started. Ask started out of when I got on the internet and mostly Twitter days, right? It's like 2007 timeframe. I think when you're young, you have a lot of confidence. Some people, you have a lot of confidence, like my personality, type A, overly confident, amazing mother who raised me. Dad was great. Kind of like, just thought I'll do it. Like I have like a do it mentality. Right. You're very ignorant and overly confident, and you think like you know the answers, right? And then every time I met someone who was more kind of like open-minded, humble, taught me something, every time you learn something and you kind of get exposed to a new world, you realize that none of us have hardly any answers to anything, and all of us know just a little bit about something. Mm-hmm. And once you had that mentality, I became obsessed with like curiosity. And so I started this little interview show, and I was like, I hated when I heard interviews from a marketing expert about how to do marketing. I'm like, I can go read about all the things. And I was more interested in the person of the side of the story that's personal to them, that has nothing to do with what they always get asked. And so I started asking people like Jason Fried. I asked him, why do you love tea? Because in his bio, he says, I love tea. And he just talked about how he has an appreciation for like overly simplifying everything and the craft that you can make something from like tea leaves, which are so minimal every morning, which can then like have an effect on your brain to help you think and create simple software products. Like it all tied into his philosophy on life. And so I just kept asking. And I was like, I asked Jason Fried, I asked Gary Vaynerchuk, I asked my one last week blew my mind. This guy who was the former head of the Navy, I interviewed him, and he learned one day that you should lead by never giving an order. And his whole life, he'd been a captain in the Navy, he'd just given orders. And then one day, he gave an order that basically, if they would have executed on it, they might have killed everyone on the ship. Because he didn't know the information needed to know about this new submarine they were driving, but the guys in the engine room did. So from that day forward, he said, I'll never make another order. And he basically said, all I want to do is move the information down the ladder to the knowledge, or the decision, move the decision-making down the ladder to the people with the information. And that's all. You should flip all models on its head in the thinking economy, because if you want people to think, you need them to have powers to make decisions. If you want them to just act like in a factory world, then you need to tell them what to do. And that like blew my mind. So I kept doing this and asking these questions. And then I realized like, it's much bigger than that. Ask dinners we do, I hire a professional moderator, a TV host to come in, and we do no phones, only a notebook. And it's all super personal. Like everything in there is like this behind the scenes stories of life, divorce, insecurities. And the moderator is usually really good. The last one was Andrew Warner, and he like blew people's minds because he digs, right? And he's telling stories about people giving up for their kids for adoption and then finding them 20 years later, and like, you know, all this crazy, crazy stuff. And you know, this is like the founder of Geek Squad was at the last one, and Grant Amahara, who the host of Mythbusters, and he's talking about like how he found his girlfriend on fucking Twitter. And I'm like, what? Like, you're like the host of a TV show. Right. And I don't know, dude, I became obsessed with curiosity. And I actually think that one of the most intelligent things in life is curiosity. And when you realize that, it's like, that's my lifetime brand. Ask is my lifetime company. I don't plan to raise money. We've now started building a lot of products in the space. Ask Surveys is a survey product because everything starts with a question. Everything in life. Yep. And I'd go into marketing meetings and they'd have all these graphs and charts, but no one could tell me what the fuck it meant. Or they'd make up stories, right? It's like graphs and charts don't tell you anything. So all of our products are narrative on top of data. So when you do all the surveys, when you log in, it is literally a Mad Lib of story. And it tells you what the ones that are trending the most positively, what cities are working, whatever your things are. Like our survey product is trying to put narrative to find the right answers on top of asking questions. So we own askyourcompany.com, askmetrics.com, asknotebooks.com. Like we're building out an entire suite of I call it the Ask Empire, but like of helping people get smarter through knowing what to ask. Yeah. To finish that, your one question about how do you know if it's the right question, it's really interesting. This guy who I really respect, Clay Christensen, who wrote one of my favorite books on technology called The Innovator's Dilemma. Mm-hmm. He talks a lot about how you know it's the right question. And he said, what you really understand is that when you ask the right question, the answer is usually pretty easy. And if you're really struggling to find the answer, change the question. And you don't know what the right question is, but if you change the question and the answer becomes obvious, that's when you know you have the right question. And so he gives an example of this guy who came to America, and he was from China. And amongst most Americans in the Western civilization, they think capitalism and democracy is a good thing, right? And even after 2008 and the collapse, most people still believe that it's a better world to live in a capitalistic and like a democracy society. Mm-hmm. And they go through this MBA school, and Clay, after 2 years being there with this guy from China, he asked him, why doesn't democracy and capitalism work everywhere? And the guy looked at him, he said, that's the wrong question. He said, what you're missing is that if you look at on a map, he mapped out all the data points of what countries in the world have implemented and successfully kept doing a capitalist and democratic society. And every single one of them that succeeded versus every one of them that failed had an underlying common religious belief. And so if you look at all the countries where it failed, it was because they had like 3 different governments, or they had, not governments, 3 different like really strong religions. And religion was the underlying of even in America or the world. You just have this inherent trust for other individuals. So I trust you enough to make capitalism work, which is based on contract law and trust. And he's like, so what is the institution that's going to become the trust factor if religion does not play that role anymore? which could then maybe make capitalism and democracy work. And he's like, he never even thought about that question.
Right.
And then it was like, holy fuck, that's really clear why all these countries failed. And the US government goes in and says, capitalism and democracy is better. You should do this. Right. And they should be saying, what is the underlying trust system that we can impose that helps everyone have an underlying trust in this country?
Right. Well, you know what? That's the Clay Christensen example is incredible. I agree with it 100%. A lot of what we do in Exosphere really comes down to we're just asking them better questions that they have never asked themselves. And I think, and I do like the point of curiosity as the anchor behind all these things, because with curiosity I think comes certain humility. And I think those are the two things that you need to sort of be okay with not knowing, so you can to have that hunger to know more, right? I think it really everything. All the people that I know that are really successful, they usually show a lot of curiosity and a lot of humility at the same time. But I will definitely make a mental note to when I'm not seeing the problem clearly. When the answer is not clear, just switch the question, because I think that is fantastic.
And that's all you learn, right? Yeah. You learn that, I'm humble. Like people say that online, like when they're bragging about themselves, but really, it's really that if you're gonna lead and run a company, no one wants to work with a fucking ego or asshole. And most of the time in life, the reasons teams don't work is because of ego. And hiring for people that don't have that is kind of something I became obsessed with.
No, interesting. So you're looking a lot about people that don't have their ego first, right? They don't prioritize.
Yeah, and they're self-aware, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at us when we got online.
Yeah.
We both were very strong, opinionated writers, which is why I attracted to you. I liked you. I thought, I like this Carlos guy. He's like, fuck it, this blah, blah, blah. And you it had a tone of, I know it.
Yep.
And I know it different because this is the way it should be done.
Which doesn't mean I don't have to keep learning. It just means, hey, I feel strong about this. I'm going to put it out there and let reality crush it, not my insecurities.
And I wrote very similar, right?
Yeah.
I was like, this is done. And we had a very edgy tone. Spinks liked it. You liked it.
Yep.
Other people hated it. They're like, that guy's an asshole. And if you look at how I've evolved and like what I've came to find, what I want my voice to be is the only time I write anymore. Yeah. Which now has been, for me, much better. Like my last article I wrote had like 30,000 page views. And the reason I think that it gets a much higher page views, and one I have a very clear focus on, I only write about products and software when I have a story that has affected me. And so I always write about the story. And it's very succinct, and I've been trying to get better at writing and write really clearly. And my style is very like short, but with story. And it's been really awesome, in my opinion, to evolve over 6 years to a place where now I feel like I only write with these moments of inspiration about a software product. So it's all about product design or product software, and it's very focused with a story. So it's kind of an outsider's view about a thing happening, not me saying this is why I think this is the only way it should be. Right. And I have found a much more rewarding and honest place for me to write in that behavior, which I think has a more like humble, honest tone, and stories, are what kind of drive the world. So
I think
it's been great for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconception about having a strong voice, connecting that with some sort of arrogance, and there's none of that. You can have a strong voice and also be humble. And actually, I think it's actually a lot more honest. It's a lot more because you're actually putting yourself fully out there. If you're always putting disclaimers to everything you're saying, you're kind of like just making sure that no one can say anything to you or criticize you. And I think real vulnerability comes with a sort of, hey, yes, this is me, this is what I think, and bring it on. But this is what I think. But Shane, I wanted to thank you, man, because you shared a lot and a lot of great insights, but also a lot of a great story. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for doing this. I hope we can do it again soon.
Hey, no problem, man. If you need anything else, let me know.